This lesson is called Implied Ratios. Basically, they're just word problems that you can use ratios to solve. You can actually use ratios in a myriad of circumstances to solve for unknown things. Let's look at a couple of examples for those. So sometimes you're going to be told that what you're working with is a ratio. Other times you're going to have to sort of figure it out. And just remember that a ratio is a comparison of two things. So if you're comparing two things, especially in word problem form, a high percentage you can use a ratio to solve it. So in this case, the ratio of sailboats to rowboats was 7-4. There were 56 sailboats. How many were rowboats? Now we're going to go through this pretty quickly because you guys have all done this before. So what are we comparing? We're comparing sailboats to rowboats. So I just called that S and R. Then you're going to set up your known, and it's not even an equation. The first part of your problem is going to be what you know. We know the ratio is 7-4. There were 56 sailboats. Make sure you get your numbers in the right place. This is sailboats, not rowboats, so it has to go on top. How many were rowboats? So that's going to be where my X is. Okay? And now we just use cross multiplication. So we're going to do this times this equals this times this. So 7x, oh, let me erase what I wrote, sorry. 7x equals 280. 4 times 56 is 280. Move my 7 over. When I move that 7 over, I divide by 7. So I end up with x equals 40. Technically, we would need to say 40 rowboats. For my purposes, I don't care. But if you go to take tests and things like that, you may be required to write down what you're working with. So these are not hard. You're going to set up your formulas or your equations, your known fraction equal to your unknown portion, and then just use cross multiplication to solve. Now we're going to look at a couple because sometimes the wording is a little weird. Now this is a problem we're not told is a ratio. If 12 books weigh 20 pounds, how much would 30 books weigh? Now some of your brains are going to read this and know exactly how to do it and how to get there. I am so visual, I solve it using a ratio. And what I'm doing, I'm going to figure out what I'm comparing. Well, I'm comparing books to weights, or to how much it weighs, to pounds. So books, B over LB is what I wrote, books per pound. And I know that 12 books equals 20 pounds. So that is my first equation, or my first ratio, my known ratio. And then it says, how much would 30 books weigh? So 30 is the number of books, so I have to go on top. And then I just use cross multiplication to solve. So 12x equals 600, and that 600 came from 20 times 30. Move that 12 over and divide, and I end up with 50. Now listen, if your brain, like Luke would read that and be able to do it in 2 seconds without writing anything down. If you can do that, just do that. I don't care how you get to the answer for this, just get there. All right, let's look at this one. Mrs. Tyler can tie 25 bows in 3 minutes. How many bows can she tie in 1 hour? Now listen, you've got to pay some attention. Well, I mean, you need to always be paying attention, but here's an issue. My first set of information is given to me in minutes, and then my second set of information is given to me in hours. You have to make sure that whatever you're working with are in the same, dimensions are not maybe the right word, but the same information set. If I'm dealing with minutes, then the whole thing has to be minutes. If I'm dealing with feet, then they all need to be in feet. So we're going to need to convert an hour to 60 minutes. 1 hour is 60 minutes. That way they're both in the same format. So I'm comparing bows to minutes. She can tie 25 bows in 3 minutes. There's my known ratio. How many bows can she tie in 1 hour? Now 60 is our converted, and it's a minute, not bows, so it goes on the bottom. And now I'm just going to use cross multiplication to solve. And in this case, I'm writing it a little backwards. You may not need to because my brain sees it. This is this. So 25 times 60 is 1500 equals 3x. I'm going to move that 3 over here. When I do, I divide by it. So 500 equals X. So she can tie 500 bows in 1 hour. Let's do one more. And this says 6 is to 15 as 9 is to what number? Now, these are technically, this is set up like an analogy, which is more of a literature kind of thing. But this is to, in mathematics, represents a fraction. So 6 is to 15 is going to be 6 over 15. As 9 is to what number? So 6 over 15 equals 9 over x. Now I just use cross multiplication. 6x, and then 9 times 15 is 135. Move the 6 over and divide, and I end up with 22.5. Now, you might need to pay attention to some of these questions. So, for example, if you have a question that says, one bus can carry 32 passengers, how many buses are needed for 625 passengers? And you end up with like 12 and a half. There are certain times that you can't have a half of something. I can't have a half of a school bus. So what I would need to do is round that up to the nearest whole. Okay, that's just going to kind of take you thinking logically about some things. I can have half of a pizza. I can read half of a book, but I can't buy or rent half a bus, right? So just kind of pay attention. Sometimes you might need to round up on some things. Okay, your homework is an online quiz. There are 10 of these to do. And that's it for ratio word problems.